Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Wednesday, March 19th. Derek Van Riper, Eno here with you on this episode. Game 2 from Tokyo is in the books. The Dodgers sweep their opening series against the Cubs. We had the highly anticipated debut of Roki Sasaki. It was brief as expected, but we'll dig into what we saw from that start. Tons of other spring news items to get to on this show as well. And later on in the show, we'll talk about some of the players we are relying most heavily on for our teams in 2025. That was a mailbag request from Dr. Tim that I think we can certainly oblige. Like, I think there's no reason why we shouldn't throw that out there because it's fun. You should know.
It's exactly who you think it is.
Mostly a list of players that you've heard us talk about and hype up for the last several months, but you never know. Maybe the occasional twist or turn along the way. Be sure to join the Discord if you haven't done so already. You can do that with the link in the show description. And if you're going to be in the area in San Francisco next week, we have 2 live shows. You are invited to attend both of them, March 27th and March 28th, Thursday and Friday, 4:30 Pacific start time. Bear Bottle Brewing Company, the Bernal Heights location. We've got a special beer, Kayakers Cove. Eno helped brew it. We got special guests. Trevor's going to be there with us for the first show on Thursday. Ben Clemens of Fangraphs scheduled to join us on Friday. So we're looking forward to having a couple of nice beverages over the course of the evening and just hanging out throughout the day and enjoying the start of the season together.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, it's super weird because the season started, but it didn't start. It started. It's not really started. The Baseball Reference said something about, 9 days till the season starts. And all the people were like, it started. They're like, we're well aware of this, but we're counting, terrestrial opening day as the real one or something. So, I mean, all these online leagues are like trying to figure out what to do with it too, So yeah. I think a lot of leagues you could try and game the system by, drafting something that has already happened and getting credit for it.
John Birdie's 2 stolen bases in the opening series, for example. Landon Knack getting the win in game 2. These things are going to be utilized in the free peak scenarios where you draft after these games and they still count. So yeah, there will be some leveraging.
I've settled on one thing though, because I've debated this a bunch, and I've last year I think I drafted Jason Hayward in a couple leagues just to get him for those games, and then was kind of disappointed with the return. And I know that yes, you could win or lose the season by 1 win or 1 stolen base or whatever, but you have to also think that the bottom of your roster are lotto tickets. And when you are saying, I want to draft this 1 win from Landon Knack, you are also saying, I don't want to draft potential 20 saves from, I don't know, Bo Brisky or Mike Clemens.
Colin Holderman, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a choice to be made. I mean, yes, it's not it's 100% of 1 win versus a 20% chance of 25 saves or whatever, but the math might actually be to go towards more lottery tickets and not just buying 1 win.
Depends on the format, I think. 12-team leagues, there's going to be guys like Holderman available on the wire most of the time. 15-team leagues, something a little bit deeper. Maybe you're better off playing that lottery ticket game. A little bit of give and take there. But as far as the more functional, the broader interests go, it was the debut of Roki Sasaki in game 2. We saw him a couple times this spring, and we knew based on the duration of those outings in terms of pitches that it was going to be about 60 pitches or less for Roki in this matchup against the Cubs. And, we saw a little bit of everything. We saw the adrenaline and the electric velocity, especially at the beginning of the start, but we also saw it again in the final batters he was facing in the 3rd inning of this outing, where he was touching triple digits at various points with the fastball. The splitter just looks nasty, dude. It looks like one of the most filthy pitches in the big leagues. And I think the only real question that is pending for me with Roki is, where is the command going to settle in? Like, you could see this being a highly anticipated debut in his home country on a big stage, and extra adrenaline maybe being almost a net negative, even if it brought an extra tick or 2 on the fastball, that it probably hurt from a command perspective because he was all over the place, even with the fastball. Like, there was really nothing in the arsenal that he was locating consistently well. Even with that splitter being as filthy as it was, I think you see like one that would have actually been a called strike of all the pitches that he threw. So some fastballs missing in the meaty part of the plate, some non-competitive ones, and the final line was okay, all things considered. But where do you stand with Roki now that you've seen him a few different times and trying to put what happened in this game into appropriate context?
I was at a bar late night in Arizona.
It's a great story incoming right here.
With multiple directors of R&D and analysts, a scouting cross-checker, just a cool group of people. And near the end of the night, someone declared, "All right, let's have it. Your boldest predictions, the ones that you wouldn't even put in your bold predictions article. Let's go." And there were different names going around, and I said, "Roki Sasaki is just going to be okay."
Did they all just start laughing at you, or
yes,
what was the response?
Yes. They thought it was pretty bold.
That was pretty bold. I mean, it probably took a lot of liquid courage to get to the point to say that out loud in front of the people you were with.
My comp has been Kevin Gossman, but when you talk about and Kevin Gossman, like a Kevin Gossman with the 99 mile an hour fastball would probably be pretty good. I mean, Kevin Gossman himself had some really excellent seasons. He had the 2021 with the Giants with a 2.81 ERA and just buckets of strikeouts. I think that a Kevin Gossman outcome for Roki Sasaki would be a disappointment given all the hype he's gotten. And there is one thing that Roki has not demonstrated yet in the major leagues that Kevin Gossman really has, which is command. Now, one thing that is cool about Sasaki's splitter is I think that he has pretty good feel for that. And if you saw that, even that spray chart of where he was throwing them, it was in pretty decent locations, And then there was this article on Baseball Prospectus that was really great that showed, and if you can look at his movement here. Like one thing that stands out for me on this movement profile is that Roki Sasaki's fastball is exactly dead zone. So if you look at this is movement by expected movement given their arm slot. And if you look at fastball, the black dots are actual movement, and the sort of black shading behind is what you'd expect. So he is exactly what you would expect from the fastball, and which is why he threw 66 of them and got 2 whiffs yesterday. So I know it's good velo, but it's not good shape. And I don't want to get too far into that because obviously Paul Skeens, we said he didn't have ideal shape and he just blew everyone away. So the splitter there is non-expected movement. The slider is bad, but one thing that this story pointed out, and the story is by Mario Delgado Gonzor, who I met this weekend at the Saber Analytics Conference. It's a great story. You should read it. What he points out is that even though the slider is poor and expected movement, it actually looks a lot like the splitter and has some commonalities with the splitter. So he might be able to play a poor slider off of the splitter and make them both better. I'm just wondering if that four seam is enough. I think he's going to have to throw a sinker or a cutter or something to mask the four seam, because I think what we've seen so far, even in minor league games and spring training games, and now this game, is that fastball is not fooling anybody. We've seen really good swings off that fastball, and 2 whiffs out of 66 thrown is poor for a fastball that goes 99. So that was my boldest take on Roki. My real take on Roki is that he's got some flaws, and we're talking about him like he has no flaws, and he may be able to mask those flaws and show the kind of ability to pick up pitches that he hasn't quite shown yet. But if he can pick up a cutter or sinker, I think he'll be a lot better. And just overpowering them and throwing a bunch of those splitters, like Kodai Senga doesn't have great command, doesn't have a great breaking ball, doesn't have a 99 mile an hour fastball, but Kodai Senga has a cutter. And we may find some point at which Roki Sasaki needs another pitch.
So as far as the depth of the arsenal, command questions, the problems you're raising, the dead zone fastball, not necessarily having the cutter or the 2-seamer ready to go, most of that seems sort of normal when you consider that Roki's 23. It's just unpolished because of age and experience. And even though he's been dominant in Japan with the arsenal he's been working with, it doesn't mean he's going to do the exact same thing out of the box. I hope people listen to this show haven't had that expectation all along. I think the market's been somewhat reasonable on Roki overall. The ADP on Roki Sasaki, do you feel like people were overreacting this draft season to what he was likely to bring to the table? We've talked about all the workload restrictions that come from being as part of the 6-man rotation, but I'm looking at the recent ADPs. The range is pick 62 to 118, so the average is pick 90. Like pick 90 for a guy with these skills. And
so that would be a high-end number 2 or a low-end number 1?
More of a high.
What do you just sorted by
standard
ADP? 2? What number SP is he?
Knocking out the relievers, probably about 25. Yeah, so like a 2, a typical 2.
Well, that's totally reasonable. When he starts, the upper range of that is not reasonable to me. And what I have found is that he isn't just in a pocket that I haven't been buying in, So,
right.
It's fine. That's actually, yeah, you're right. That is restrained. There are definitely drafts where you'd be like, that wasn't restrained.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody who's like loves Roki, But the overall numbers are fine. Yeah. I think that actually describes what I'm talking about, which is like, hey, this guy has the upside of, has the middle outcome of a major league starting pitcher that people, during his peak drafted all the time as a borderline 1/2, right? Kevin Gausman just 2 years ago was in the almost exact same position.
Yeah, and if you want to use that Gausman comp a little more, think about how long it took Kevin Gausman to be the good version of Kevin Gausman. It didn't happen quickly.
That's the risk, right? Because you're buying the young Kevin Gausman. So what if you get the Baltimore years,
Yeah, I don't think it will take quite as long in this instance, but you never know.
I mean, that was also the old Baltimore park that was really hard to pitch in. And I would say that it was an old environment for pitch design.
Yep.
We're a little bit better now at really dialing in what a pitcher should do and what that pitcher should look like. I think in this case, what you have is you're just looking for him to throw a hard breaking ball. This is what Tobias Myers said. I just want to throw my breaking ball as hard as possible. I can't spin it. That's what he said. What does Casey Mize says? I can't spin it. I just want to throw a hard breaking ball as hard as I can. So, if you can get Roki to throw a 90-mile-an-hour cutter, gyro slider, whatever it is, even if it doesn't spin great, it is an amazing pitch by itself. That's sort of what I'm looking for.
Some other takeaways from this game in Tokyo. Shohei Ohtani homered, of course, because you knew Shohei Ohtani was going to homer at some point in one of these two games. He almost did it on the first pitch of the game. The crowd roared like off the bat, like they thought it was going to go out, and that was a pretty fun moment. But he got his homer later on. Got a little help maybe from fans behind the outfield wall, but upon review, still a homer. So it didn't. Can you imagine being the crew chief that has to announce to the crowd at the Tokyo Dome?
It's not a homer.
It's not a homer for Shohei Ohtani. I think peer pressure may have been a factor in the review, that there was a collective agreement like, it's a little borderline. Maybe we should just say it's a homer for the safety and sake of everybody on the field right now.
No, we're not doing any conspiracy theories.
No. Not with the homer. It looked like a homer. It looked like it hit a fan high enough up where if you kind of project where it was going, it was just barely going to clear the wall. But if you want to steal a home run, Enrique Hernandez got one. So there's another one of your random guys that'll end up getting drafted late where you get the free peek. Oh, there's Kike home run. Let's get that on there. Tommy Edman actually has the first home run of the 2025 season. And I thought there was an interesting question on our Discord. Brockness Monster, frequent Discord user. Like, what is a message in Discord? It's just a message, right? It doesn't have a stupid name. It's not a skeet. It's just which I just cringe every time I say it. Yeah, well, it was a public message, but
I see.
But Brock was writing,
dude. It's all posting.
Just a post. It's just a post.
Everything's a post. You can be on Blue Sky and post. You can be on Twitter and post.
All right, we've ended it forever. There are no skeets. There are only posts.
Just a post.
So Brock wrote, Derek Hardy had a piece a few years ago how there were no lefty mashers, guys that truly could hit the 135 WRC plus with the platoon advantage and would likely be like average without it. If we think Tommy Edman of being so good against lefties, what if he kept that swing and stayed right-handed against righties? Comparing his bat speeds from both sides, like should Tommy Edman effectively give up switch hitting. And like, when would you make the case for that, given that mashing lefties alone isn't usually enough to float playing time? Edman's different because of his defensive versatility, but for plenty of guys, there's been a point in their big league career where they've had to say, yeah, I'm just better off hitting from one side, even though I've been able to switch hit up to this point.
I guess the guy, Cedric Mullins is the guy who did it, who just stayed lefty. And I guess the guy that I would think of on the other side is Ozzie Albies, who against righties has a 96 WRC plus, and against lefties has a 144 WRC plus. And that split is beyond what you'd expect. If he's a true talent 144 guy against lefties, then he should be, I don't know, like a 125 guy against righties, And the statistical answer is that, I guess he's getting close. He has 2,900 plate appearances against righties. The one that you don't know if you believe is actually the one against lefties. You don't know that he's a 144 WRC plus guy against lefties because he only has 947 plate appearances there, and you're looking for 1,000 plus in the split. But that's pretty close to 1,000. So when you have a split that big, he's actually getting pretty close to where the math is saying something's wrong here. He's an outlier. And I guess that's an easy answer. But the other thing is, what happens when you get this far into a split that much and that big is that he's doing just fine the way he is. You know what I mean? It's like, are you going to go to Ozzie Albies, who has 21 wins in the major leagues in terms of wins above replacement, has been 8% better than league average? Are you going to go to him now and say, oh yeah, you really need to stop swinging from the left side? I don't know. I think it would take a really bad season. It would take a really bad season on top of having robust splits that tell you the same.
I know we looked this up at one point, but Elly De La Cruz, has a pretty different bat speed on the two different sides too. So I wonder how much that information being more readily available to teams might eventually lead them to encourage switch hitters to make that change, right? Like, that's just it's a really new way to think about how much better you are at swinging the bat from one side versus the other.
I mean, you just can't forget that these are people. You know what I mean? It's like you can make the statistical case for this, but are you good? Like, you're going to come up to Tommy Edman, who just signed. What did he sign? A 5-year, $75 million deal. Tommy,
take all those at bats from the right side.
Yeah, you got to stop. I got to stop doing what? And these are guys, a lot of them. I mean, some come to switch hitting late. Maybe it's easier to convince them to stop. But all these guys have been switch hitters since Little League. I don't know, man. There's that adage that as the coach, you can be part of the solution, but you can also become the problem, which is that if you come to somebody who's doing fine and say, you got to stop switch hitting, then you become the problem if it all falls apart. But if they are having a terrible year, that's why I say that the math is, the real situation is you have fairly robust splits where they're getting close to 1,000 plate appearances in the split, and they are struggling. That's the one time you might come in. And you may want that bat speed at part too. Because you can come in and say, the splits say this, and then they say, well, I just need a couple more at bats. It'll be fine, And you can say, well, the bat speed also says that you're different. Maybe the player would listen. But it's also just the coaching process is really hard. It's really hard because your ego's on both sides. You want to be helpful. You don't want to be telling them everything you know and like try to prove to them everything you should be listened to. It's something that takes time, and and the stupidest part is coaches don't get time. Coaches get fired the quickest. It's really difficult to be able to develop a rapport to the point where you might be able to suggest something like this to a player when you know that you will be the first one fired if the player sucks and if the team sucks.
So you think it's more of a last chance saloon, late career sort of thing than more of like a mid career? Hey, wait, I might just be better if I only hit from this side. You think that's the more likely time we'd see that change?
Yeah.
I mean, the Mullins change was pretty, or like as that's the other major inflection point is when you're breaking in, like right when you're breaking into the big leagues, you're saying, oh, okay, this worked up until this point at every level, but it's just not working anymore. So now I'm going to go ahead and switch.
He was a big leaguer. That's the difference. Once you become a big leaguer and you're doing fine and you're even gotten a free agent contract, like, I don't know, that's the time to tell somebody.
Well, and it's also too, like if your better side is the left side, you're going to have the bigger share of a platoon. You're going to get the larger share of playing time. So I think that's
right. If it's
that's
like,
the easier
only
toggle
swing righty,
to make.
That's going to be a real hard sell. It's like, oh no, don't put me in that box.
But maybe Tommy is in that window because he did get the payday, right? If the Dodgers were to go to him and say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a fun question. And Edman continues to do a lot of damage against lefties, living up to the hype. So not at all surprised to see him get a homer in that matchup in the series in Tokyo. Some other news in baseball that I didn't expect to see this. This popped up Tuesday night on my feed. Craig Calcaterra, who writes the Cup of Coffee blog newsletter, was all over this story. And the Department of Defense's website deleted a Jackie Robinson story, several stories. The URL's been tweaked, and it's ugly, right? It's an ugly story. It's an ugly situation. It's the kind of thing that you never really expect to happen, and then you see it happen. And you're like, well, okay, this is going to get corrected, right? Like I have this built-in assumption that this will be fixed very soon, and yet I have a little bit of doubt in my mind that I didn't previously have, right? Like that's sort of like the new part is like, I think they're going to fix it because why the heck wouldn't they? Given who Jackie Robinson is important and his importance to American history.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many different ways my mind goes with this, and as a data guy, some part of it is that that we've shown that peer-reviewed studies that diversity has a positive effect on something as simple as income or like profitability of corporations. I mean, we've shown as a country that we are stronger with more immigration and diversity, and now this has become sort of a bad word that needs to be scrubbed. Today, Calcaterra had some further reporting that MLB itself has taken the word diversity off of its pages, that describing their different efforts in different places. And so it's become this bad word. And I don't think that it's necessarily somebody calling around being like, you need to take this word down. It's become this word that's such a touchstone for debate and so vilified as a word that people are sort of taking it down out of, I would read it as sort of out of worry, out of keeping their head down. Don't take our funding away. Don't do this, so literally, I think this is an AI scrub of, anything that could be considered, diversity based content. And it's just so silly and it's so angering. I mean, think about the history of baseball. Think about your favorite players. Are they all white?
They are not. Are
you proud of Jackie Robinson's place in baseball history? I hope so, because as a sport, we retired his number in every team. I mean, this is a fascinating and amazing player that withstood so much to do what he did on the field, and that should be something we're proud of. That's the thing that I land on. It's like, that should be something we're proud of. We should have so many articles about Jackie Robinson, not fewer. And so even if it does get fixed, there's also a trickle down where there will be other pieces that don't get fixed.
Right. I think the response, the outcry for someone of Jackie Robinson's status will be different than for other people who have served this country whose stories are less known, right? I think that's where it's kind of like there's still parts of this that are going to be impactful. Other pages that are gone that people aren't going to realize are gone, or many people aren't going to realize are gone.
Navajo code breakers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fascinating story that has to do with data and language, and that the Navajo language is like an unbreakable code almost.
Critically important in winning World War II.
Yes, let's
delete it.
Forget about that. Yeah.
So it's it's ugly. I'm curious to see where this goes next. I hope it's correction and apology. I'm not expecting apologies. just sort of reading the room. But
yeah,
man, like we should be celebrating Jackie Robinson. We should be celebrating diversity. We've reached the point where people and companies are hiding from this as a lightning rod term, and it's like that is absurd. I can't believe we've reached this point. That is where we are. So we'll see where we go. We got Jackie Robinson Day coming up here in less than a month. So perhaps we'll see some changes on MLB's website and otherwise between now and then. Moving on to our more traditional topics.
Makes me mad too. God,
different reasons, different kinds of infuriating.
Monday?
This is a Wednesday in the middle of the week. Just a Wednesday, man.
Ass day.
It's a crappy Wednesday, to put it mildly. So this situation, Jared Jones is going to miss his final spring start. I just saw another update on this story. He's already getting a second opinion on the imaging after having some elbow soreness. Someone asked earlier in the week, second opinions ever good? No, not really. Not usually. It doesn't mean there's nothing going on. It just means the extent of the something going on could be very bad.
That's the worst, man. God. He's exciting, man. He was throwing a sinker. I thought he was really going to put it all together this year.
Yeah. So that's more of a, okay, well, let's just find out how bad the news is once that second opinion comes in. The Pirates do have some pitching depth to lean on. We've talked about Bubba Chandler, Thomas Harrington, Braxton Ashcraft. So at least in the short term, maybe in the long term, this is going to open the door for somebody who we didn't have projected to be part of their rotation.
I wonder if Harrington makes it. I mean, Bubba's obviously the more exciting prospect, but on some level, when you're watching these games, it's almost like in Little League when, there's a guy with good stuff and then there's a guy with good command, and the guy with good command gets put in by the coach because there's been so many walks. Bubba's having a little trouble with the zone right now. And I watched Thomas Harrington yesterday, and it was only 93, but it's a really good sweeper. Stuff Plus actually liked him in the minor leagues, and he was doing a much better job commanding. It looked really poised out there. And I don't know what numbers to put on this because I don't even know what number we put on Jared Jones being hurt. But let's say it's 75%. I mean, that's not good.
Well, yeah, even if it's some rest and a PRP injection, it's still going to be weeks before he's pitching in games again, most likely, just based on what they're reporting right now.
Yeah, and then I guess there's whether or not they're on the 40-man, which I don't know about Harrington. I think Chandler is. Maybe, I think. Well, anyway, I would say that Harrington might be even with Chandler for odds for taking over.
Yeah, it just means more of that depth will be utilized. And just thinking about Harrington with that fastball velocity, does have a 45 grade from the Fangraphs crew on that pitch. So it's not necessarily the fastball that's made him an interesting prospect. It's it's the secondaries, the curveball and the changeup. Changeup grades out as his best pitch. Command grades out well. So it's a little more of a command and secondaries over velo profile anyway, which seems kind of odd because you're not usually as into pitchers that grade out that way.
My takeaways weren't all positive. I was like, oh, 93. I think I even said that to you when we got online today. I was like, Harrington was only 93 yesterday.
I was like, was that down? It's like, no, it's just.
I don't even know. Yeah, I guess that's just it. I'm looking at games started. It's Keller, Jones, Skeens, Haney. Haney's in now, I guess. I think Haney and Falter are in. And they still need a fifth, which, Harrington, Fulmer have starts, and Chandler's starts were not starts. They were against the second, against the minor leaguers. So Harrington's start yesterday may have even been a reaction to the news.
Maybe.
Put him in against the major leaguers, see how he looks. Anyway, Harrington in your deepest leagues becomes a pickup. That's the, I guess, positive silver lining.
Harrington versus Richard Fitz as a in-season pickup in leagues that already drafted where they're both on the wire.
We'll take Harrington.
Okay. Maybe more of a long-term opportunity since the injured pieces in that Boston rotation are kind of all expected to make their way back over the course of the first month.
It's like makes it a little bit easier.
yeah, a little easier to stream. Working
Fitz could be 97 and be great and have like a 4.3 ERA anyway because of Fenway.
It is possible. Some other news to get to. We had a bunch on the rundown yesterday. We didn't get to because we ran out of time. How about this one? Jace Jung optioned to AAA. And it's going to be a combination of Zach McKinstry and Andy Ibanez playing third base while Matt Vierling's out. Could see some Javi Baez there too, though, depending on how much they want to play Trey Sweeney at short. So I don't know. Like Jace Jung didn't do himself any favors this spring. It was a pretty quiet spring for him at the plate. And I feel like when you're in a crowded roster situation like that, it's enough to kind of nudge you off or onto the roster. If you have a bad or really strong spring, you can actually swing that decision just a little bit. I think in redraft leagues, other than like AL only leagues, it probably makes them a short-term cut while you wait for that next opportunity to emerge at some point in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, I think that the underrated part of this is Spencer Torkelson playing pretty well, if that makes any sense, because they're playing some Spencer Torkelson in the outfield, and I think they just wanted to maybe reward Spencer Torkelson for having a good spring. And, you know, both Jung and Torkelson have options, but maybe they just saw they liked one way better than the other. And that they could maybe cover third base with some credible veterans in a platoon. So the corresponding move for Jung coming back could be Torkelson going down. And maybe that's the toggle that they're playing with right now.
It could be, yeah. I think with Torkelson, it's also going to hinge on how much they play Kerry Carpenter in the outfield, as we talked about before. But he's popped 4 homers so far this spring, 25% K rate, getting a lot of run too, 40 plate appearances already. So they have been taking a long look at him so far. And it's easy to forget we're only 2 years removed from that 31 homer campaign that had everybody thinking that maybe Spencer Torkelson was going to make good on being a first overall pick. You know, back in 2020, he was the number 1 overall guy. And I just thought there was maybe a better floor than what we saw last year. But the thing that I've always been confused about with Spencer Torkelson, it's like, even when it's good, it's never great. Like relative to his plate skills, it's always a lower average than you'd expect, in part because of the batted ball profile, I think, too. Like tons of fly balls. It's going to happen like that. I wonder if we can still see a scenario in which Torkelson comes close to everyday plate appearances on this team, or if it's still going to be more of like a semi-regular. Like most likely it's 350 or 400 plate appearances as opposed to 550 or 600, right? But maybe with an injury or two, there's still an outcome where Torkelson's a high volume player in this Detroit lineup again. Yeah.
I just wonder also what the park interaction is. Like maybe there's a time that Spencer Torkelson is a like regular player just on a different team in a different park that doesn't maybe just put him in a weird headspace when like he's hitting balls all right and they're not going out because it's Detroit or whatever. You know what I mean? Like he's in Arizona right now and he's hitting tanks. You know, it's like, and is he going to go to Detroit and just, you know, they're not going to go out and he's going to get depressed and he's going to try and change something again and it's not going to work and he's going to go down. Like like having a more pitcher friendly park does make hitting development even harder, I think. And you have in Jung and Torkelson 2 guys that I still have some hope for, but I don't know how it's going to work out.
The interesting thing for me too with Torkelson for his career, and weather's a big factor. We know Comerica plays really tough on hitting in the early cold months of the season. For his career, Spencer Torkelson has an 81 WRC plus in the first half, 118 in the second half. He goes from a 349 slug to a 462, which over
he's hitting 50% fly balls. Like he really cares about the weather.
Yeah. I mean, over a multiple year sample, you start to go, okay, maybe there's just a seasonal park factor that really works against him because of the type of player he is too. Like, I don't know. There could be a little more going on with Torque than you think. And it's like the cheapest price it's been in a couple of years if you want to try and take that flyer at the end of your roster, because the early season opportunity might be there. If you're playing for now, playing for the immediate. Who can I use because they're playing a lot? Looks like Torkelson's going to play more than we expected, at least to begin this season, as this roster begins to take shape. I did see a story. This seems like there's still an open question in Boston about who's going to close. There was a report this morning that came out that suggested Aroldis Chapman is moving into the primary role. Like he's the in-house favorite right now. I think that was Sean McAdam and Chris Cotillo that put that one together. No announcement's been made yet, but if you're taking a late flyer in the Boston bullpen, who is it? Is it Chapman? Is it Hendricks? Is it Justin Slayton? Is it someone else entirely? Who actually ends up leading this team in saves when the dust clears in 2025?
I'm going Slayton. I mean, Chapman just is wild, and I feel like he's getting wilder as he gets older. I don't know if he needs to like reach further back to get the same velo or whatever, but I think that's it's one of those things at the extremes. In the middle, maybe command is fungible, and it doesn't matter as much as the old school heads think it does. But on the extremes, I think it does matter. I mean, it's really, really hard even to put somebody like Edward Cabrera or Joe Boyle in as your closer, I feel like. You know what I mean? Like if they're just spraying it and walking guys, they eventually will lose their job. The easiest way to lose your job is walk the bases loaded or give up a homer. And Chapman can do that. Not the homer, but he'll walk the bases loaded. And that's just, you don't want to see that from your closer. I think Slayton is just, and it's weird to say this about like a Rule 5 young guy, that just got to the big leagues, but he's a little bit more refined. I mean, it's just more command. I think it's Slayton.
Yeah, goes a long way. It might have to wait a little while for it to develop, though. That's the tricky part. You might think Slayton is going to lead the team in saves. You might not be getting any saves in the first couple of weeks of the season. It could be Chapman. It could be a committee. It could take some time for Chapman to lose the job if he gets it first. But that appears to be the way the Red Sox are leaning. Still a lot of questions about how they're going to handle second base. It seems like every day you read a story about them, and it's all about Christian Campbell and whether or not he's going to break camp with the club. I think we'll just have to wait until they give the final word.
Those are really hard to read. Like, I don't understand. Like, all the updates are like, it couldn't be. And then the headline is like, he's the starter at second base. And you're like, what? That's not what the update says.
If I had one thing I could be on be a fly on the wall for a major league front office, it would just be the conversations around these types of situations. Like, how do you make the final call on this? How do you decide that a player is or is not ready based on what's happening in the spring environment, especially if you go by just what he's done at the plate this spring? It would be a clear no. He's struck out in a third of his plate appearances so far. He's hitting 158 with a 289 OBP and a 211 slug. It's only 16 games. It's spring. It doesn't mean Christian Campbell's not going to be good, but if you needed that little nudge of confidence.
Report said something about like his at-bats have started looking better.
Sure, they've started looking better. But do you feel like that is enough for a guy that's only played 19 games at AAA? Like, and I say this as someone who thinks Christian Campbell's going to be a great player. Like, I wonder how you would talk yourself into that decision if you'd say, well, the alternative is only David Hamilton. And we kind of know what David Hamilton is. We don't quite know where Campbell's at. And the worst case scenario, Campbell comes up, struggles for a couple of weeks, we send him down. Like, did the Orioles do wrong by Jackson Holliday trying to break him in, send him down, break him in, send him down a couple of times last year? Like, is that the worst thing in the world? It depends on the player, I think, in a lot of situations. But
well, that's what they said about the Astros and Cam Smith and stuff. What we said in yesterday's show was just that, like, they said there was this quote in Chandler Rome's article that, like, from a scouting background, Dana Brown from a scouting background believes very strongly that, just giving them every day at bats is a huge part to developing players. So, I wonder if there is a split when it comes to data and scouting on this idea. But just from a human standpoint, David Hamilton has found some success on the roster in the big leagues in an uncertain role, I would say. He's been okay. And he hasn't always known what he's doing tonight and, like, where he's playing tonight. And that seems like a really good guy to have on the roster. I think David Hamilton is making my roster no matter what. So the real question is, do we want to try and give Christian Campbell like a month just as a starter, because he definitely has more ceiling than Hamilton, Or do we put him in the minors where he's playing every day and have a subpar option at the major league level, given that Hamilton's ceiling? So,
yeah, I mean, last year,
that's probably the kind of conversations they're having. They're talking about floor, ceiling, everyday at bats, that sort of stuff.
It was a 92 WRC plus last year from David Hamilton in his first prolonged opportunity as a big leaguer. He debuted in 2023, a tiny sample, hard to read much into that. And there's speed, there's a little bit of pop. He didn't strike out a ton. He could play good enough defense at second base to keep you afloat there.
Defensive metrics are really kind to him, actually, and suggest that he's a pretty good shortstop. Maybe he should be the shortstop over Story at this point. So, they may end up having Hamilton and Campbell up the middle at some point.
Yeah, a lot of different ways it could play out, and it will hinge a lot on just how healthy Trevor Story is this year, which just hasn't been the case really for him at all during his time in Boston. Story's having a nice spring, by the way. Popped a couple of homers, 406, 412, 750, striking out 26% of the time. But I mean, that's just picking nits. I think as far as Trevor Story kind of nudging us, hey, I'm healthy, I'm feeling good. That's the kind of spring that makes you think that he's feeling pretty good.
Feeling froggy.
Yeah, feeling froggy indeed. Is Tyler Mahle feeling froggy? He's 92.8 on the fastball, topping out at 95.4. The range was 90.4 to 95.4. But the good news here is that last week, Mahle was sent for an MRI because of some forearm soreness. A couple days later, he pitched in the minor league game. You'll notice this a lot late in spring. If guys are banged up, they'll play in minor league games because then you can retroactively put them on the IL if they need an IL stint to begin the season. The fact that he pitched in a regular Grapefruit League game on Tuesday, I think bodes very, very well. He also threw 5 innings. He pitched well. But yeah, 92.8 on the fastball. That's a great sign for Tyler Mahle. He kind of lives right near that spot where the fastball can become a big problem if he loses a tick.
And apparently that's what, his camp's stance was that there was going to be more velo in there as they approached spring training. It was hard for me to believe after, the injury news. And so I had him on a basically do not draft list, but I'm doing my working ranks right now and going to update them on Friday. And the last thing I did with Tyler Mahle's name was move him up. Not a lot though.
It's the direction that's important. The magnitude's not as important.
Yeah, I think I have maybe 109 innings on him. Still a mid-4s ERA projection, but I can put him maybe in the usable veterans category, which is right around Jameson Taillon, Chris Paddock, Tony Gonsolin, Davis Martin. So I will have him maybe in the late 120s.
The late 120s. So yeah, just barely usable veterans, I think. It's when the Bluth company gets upgraded to don't buy on the Mad Money with Kramer scene of Arrested Development and Michael's eating breakfast. He's like, don't buy. Did you hear that, Mom? Don't buy. Really moving up there. But I'm actually a little more optimistic about Mahle than you are, especially given the depth of that start. And he's more important to them right now. I know they added Patrick Corbin just for depth purposes, but John Gray got hit by a comebacker in the wrist. Mm-hmm. Cody Bradford's got the elbow injury, so they're going to open the year on the IL. So I think Tyler Mahle as a glue guy for the Rangers, at least from a real life perspective, will matter, even if his fantasy utility is more of like a streaming option for most people out there.
Yeah, I think the underlying news also is that both Rocker and Leiter are making this rotation out of spring training.
And you feel good about that?
Don't really have any other options. Well, we do have one more news note to go over, but that is relevant to my player shares.
Go ahead. You can introduce it.
Well, Jung-Hoo Lee, real quick. He's got a back injury, but I heard yesterday, was watching the game, that it's nothing structural, so they think he's going to be back.
Yeah, MRI came back clean, so I think it's going to be just a few more days, and maybe opening day is still a possibility for Jung-Hoo Lee.
Annoying though that now you're starting to be like, do you get hurt a lot? Too early.
The major injury last year was pretty fluky, so let's give it a little more time.
Pump the brakes on that one,
Yeah, we also keeping an eye on Yu Darvish. elbow inflammation after his last start. So we'll watch that.
Oh, that one's not fun. But I think that means that Matt Waldron makes the team. I don't know. It's Waldron or Vasquez. Or maybe it's both now? Is it both? That's
and they were talking about Kyle Hart versus Kolek for the last spot. So maybe it's Hart and Kolek getting in. There's a few different ways they can go. I'm not sure any of those options are good options beyond NL only leagues.
Cease, King, Pivetta, draftable in all leagues. Darvish, I think, still draftable until the news gets bad. More in IL leagues and stuff. I still think he's a good pitcher. So, yeah, Fangraphs depth chart has Hart and Kolek before Vasquez and Waldron. Hart's spring hasn't been good, though, has it?
No, and that's where I saw some rumblings that Kolek had sort of inched ahead of him when there was only one spot available. But I don't know. That one could come down to the wire.
In any case, it's Jack Leiter who's on my player shares.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about that. Who are you leaning on most heavily in 2025?
See, it's a funny way that you've put it that way. Like, I would say these are not players I'm leaning on. Because I was thinking about this too, because I was looking through my teams and like at the top of your teams, the players you're leaning on your teams, you shouldn't necessarily have a ton of the same shares because you'll have different either auction strategies or draft slots. You know what I mean? Like you shouldn't just be like, I'm taking, Jackson Merrill in the first round, no matter what my pick is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you probably don't have 8 Manny Machado teams out of 12. That's
exactly, yeah. So so the leaning on part, I'm just objecting to that because these are my lottery tickets. These are almost all guys I take after round 20. So you got the sheet. Put it up, mister.
I'll put the sheet up.
Everybody knows who's going to be number 1.
I mean, it's like the least surprise a lot of times. So
it's actually number 2 too, I think.
Here's what you're getting at, though. What you're getting at is the players you end up with the most of when you play in multiple leagues are cheaper players because they're easier to get. Your draft slot doesn't matter because at pick 250, 300, 350, 400, whatever, you just take whoever you want. You're not following the tighter orders of what's likely to happen and trying to thread that needle and max out overall value. You're just trying to find the guys you like. So that's how you end up with Osvaldo Bido on 10 teams.
10 teams. I think I have like 11 teams.
It's 10 out of 11.
Bido's on like every team I've got.
That is remarkable.
But, the average place that I draft him is I think literally like round 26 or something or 25. It's I just think he's a great late dart to take. And Ryan so the players I'm leaning on the most, I think, so are the highest ranked players here, and that would be Ryan Pepio, who I have 5 shares of. I've taken him as my 3rd starting pitcher in some leagues. I'm happier when he's like my 4th or 5th starting pitcher. So that's a little bit more I'm relying on. If he has a really bad season, that's not going to be good for me. The other player that's like that is Andres Jimenez and Brian Reynolds. Very different types of players, but I think they're sort of oatmeal-y in that they're probably going to play in their top 3 or 4 lineup slots for their teams and play every day. Jimenez a little bit more for his defense, Reynolds a little bit more for his offense, but they will provide steals and homers and be pretty good players, and they go at really boring draft slots. So none of these guys go in the first 10 rounds of your draft. But Ryan Pepio, Brian Reynolds, and Gavin Williams and Andres Jimenez are probably my highest pick shares. Why do I have 4 shares of Jake Myers? Because in all of my draft and holds, I took Jake Myers. He's a pretty good 5th outfielder. He's going to play. He's their center fielder. Why do I have 4 shares of Colin Holderman? Because in every draft and hold, he was my final pick, 50th round pick. Hey, that might be a good one.
Might be really good.
Be a good one.
Might be a better pick than you even thought at the time. Because you probably thought, if David Bednar's back or his elbow or something is a problem, great. I got the Pirates' next closer. This might happen a little sooner than expected because Bednar's still getting hit this spring, as we discussed yesterday. Yeah, I think that was the spirit of the question. Like, who's the most important to your teams because you took them a little earlier and you got them multiple places. So anybody in that pick 100 to 200 range would count for sure. Like if you've got Andres Gimenez on 4 teams, Andres Gimenez is actually pretty important to you because structurally you're probably trying to make up ground in steals, which means you didn't draft a lot of steals earlier. And if you're wrong about him, you're chasing speed in pretty much all of those leagues, potentially, given the categorical balance of what he provides.
Yeah, and we have player tiers coming out tomorrow, top 100 players. Tyler Kepner, Aaron Gleeman, and I not only put together our heads and ranked the top 100 players in sort of a war setting, not necessarily fantasy. And then we went out and got quotes from people, and I got a quote from a scout that was pretty negative about Andres Gimenez. I don't have it right in front of me, but he was not very happy with my analysis. My analysis is just like elite defense. They traded for him. I feel like that's like they want to plug him in, and just a little bit of like, hey, maybe they can find something that he once had. It's not. There's been a little bit more power this spring, and he's still not striking out a lot. So, what if he does have a 150 ISO or a 160 ISO this year? Then he's going to be a guy who hits, 260 with 18 homers and steals 30 bases. Like that, I'm not hoping for the moon.
No.
That's pretty much, it would be his best season, but it wouldn't be by much. So that's sort of what I'm hoping for. If I get 250, 10 homers, 25 stolen bases, I'm sure it'll actually still be worth around that draft slot.
Yeah, you'd probably get a lot of runs scored to go with it. So at least decent RBI totals as well. I think Gimenez is fine where he's going. And I think you're right to look back at 2022 and 2023 and say, well, there's no reason why you can't still do that from a roto perspective. And the playing time, because of the defense, the contract, the fact that they sought him out, all those things, he looks like a really stable player going in a range where guys can actually start to lose their jobs. So I think that's probably the case I would have made for Andres Gimenez, regardless of what that scout thought.
Yeah. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, I got your back.
But the Gavin Williams and Ryan Pepio also slot into something that I found, which is that starting pitchers, a little bit like catchers these days, where like they don't, like, Paul Skeens aside, they usually actually debut and struggle. Like it's really hard to be a major league starting pitcher. And I think a lot of our development process is stuff optimization. And they get to the big leagues and they're like, oh, I'm supposed to get people out. I'm not just supposed to throw the nastiest stuff I've got, And it becomes a little bit more about how do these pitches fit together. So I really like young players who have come to the big leagues and struggled, but also shown something good, So in Pepio and Williams, I feel like that's something you can almost put that over onto hitters too. Like I'm a little bit more interested in hitters who come up, done a little something, than I am really wanting to put a lot. Like even James Wood, like I'm more comfortable. I'm going to make a bold prediction about James Wood this year. And like, I'm way more comfortable doing that. Oh, James Wood. That's on your shares.
No. I like James Wood. Now, the problem with James Wood specifically and getting him on a lot of teams, I have found is that
higher and higher cost now.
The cost is up, and it's also a range where I'm often drafting pitching. So I'm just usually looking for something completely different. Yeah, kind of a fourth rounder.
Yeah.
And when I go like pocket aces or pitching a little earlier, that's when I end up, it just depends on where I was in the beginning of the order. And there's factors that lead me to either be in the spot where I feel like I want to take James Wood or be in a spot where I don't. Who do you think my most rostered player is, though? 12 leagues.
Because I had to show you mine because you're the producer of the show, and so you had to get my list and put it up there.
Yeah, mine.
You didn't have to show me yours, so
nope.
I can do this. Very quickly, I'm sure these two are on your list: Jacob deGrom and Tyler Glasnow.
Glasnow's number one. I have him in 7 out of 12 leagues.
That's good.
Spanning keeper and non-keeper formats. DeGrom.
No, not on your list.
No, I think DeGrom. I've got like a 3 DeGroms. So, 4 out of 12 sort of makes the cut for being a lot, or 5 out of 12 would be my most rostered guys. But yeah, Glasnow is my most rostered player right now, which is hard to do with a player that goes, well, he's not. He's just at that threshold where he's always there late enough where you can keep getting him if you want to. There's one on the rundown from today that I'm mad about.
Jared Jones.
Jared Jones. I got him in 5 leagues. That's going to be a problem.
Do you have who's it I just had in my head? I was looking Jesus Luzardo in a bunch of leagues.
Not yet. I'm trying the last couple. Trying to rally back. Here's what I got.
Well, I was going to guess one more. I was going to guess Brent Brown. Yeah, Brent Brown was on my list.
Ben Brown, yeah, because he's very, very inexpensive, and it's kind of an easy sort of cut for leagues that have cuts, and there will be value.
Bradish is like your IL league stash, kind of.
Yeah, and one keeper, or actually 2 keeper leagues, yeah, because long game stash. I started to think about guys coming off of Tommy John surgery, similar to prospects in those leagues, where it's like, well, instead of having 12 prospects, I'll have 11, and I'll have a pitcher that looked really, really good before he got hurt, and then maybe next year I'll have a top 15, top 20 starter that didn't cost me more than like a 9th round reserve pick, right? That's sort of the way there. Piled up a bunch of Tony Gonsolin shares because of how inexpensive he's been, so he's on 5 of my teams right now. Colt Keith is actually my most rostered hitter, which I don't think I've been targeting Colt Keith. I think I've just been waiting too long to get first base depth and seeing him as someone that will pick up in-season eligibility there. I've seen Colt Keith as a bit of an answer to some of my roster problems where I'm getting floor, but I'm also getting, I think it's still one more level of upside looking at what he's been able to do up to this point. I think we started to see some of those adjustments from him in the second half of last season. He fits into that group you're talking about. A guy that's been in the big leagues and has at least done enough to keep his job, right? Yeah. Where you can say, okay, now I can project that next sort of level on him.
And he really strikes me as a cheaper Jake Cronenworth, because Cronenworth is first base, second base eligible. I think of him as sort of like a 260, 18.5 guy, you know? And then Keith, the error bars are beyond that, right? Like maybe he can do better than that. But he also goes after Jake Cronenworth. And I have some Jake Cronenworth shares and some Colt Keith shares in leagues where I'm like, oh, CI, MI, first base, second base, like those are some cool positions to kind of to fit all in. One of the other sort of underrated things you can do is infield, outfield. So that can be really, really helpful, especially actually among stars, because you might be able to move your O'Neal Cruz from shortstop to outfield. You might actually want to do that, depending on maybe a Dansby Swanson fell to you, you know, and you're like, well, I could use Cruz in the outfield. So multi-position is not just for draft and holds. I just want to point this out too. We just finished a draft with the Listener League, and Joey Ortiz gaining shortstop eligibility will mean that on my roster, and I try to do this even in rosters that are not draft and holds and where there are FAB, I can get people off the wire if somebody gets hurt. I try to have coverage on my team, and this is why. I want to have, so on that league, once Joey Ortiz gets shortstop eligibility, I will have 2 players at every position in my roster and like 6 outfielders, right? And the idea is if someone gets hurt, I will have a replacement on the roster that I can move around depending on what's on the wire. You know, so like if there's like an outfielder on the wire, but I need a shortstop, you know, or if there's a third baseman on the wire and I can move Joey Ortiz, you know what I mean? So like it just gives you more flexibility, even in leagues that are not necessarily super deep. It'll make you more able to go to the wire and get what you want, as opposed to being like, well, there's only one shortstop worth a dang out there, you know? So that's something I would suggest to you, especially in head-to-head. You can, if you have multi-eligibility, you can move guys around and get that extra day, you know, on a non-full day, or, you know, so there's a non-zero benefit to it, and it has to do with roster flexibility, and it is the fantasy version of Chris Taylor and Enrique Hernandez and all these guys. And it does exist. There is value there. I don't know how much to put on it. If you're looking at your auction calculator, I'd put like maybe 50 cents or $1 on the guy. But sometimes you put $1 on a guy and he moves, you know, 2 or 3 slots in the rankings, you know?
Yeah, for years I talked about that with Todd Zola on the RotoWire pods, and usually $1 to $2 was sort of the higher end range of what you would add. And peace of mind is worth it, right? Being able to go into the waiver wire and just take the best available hitter because you got enough coverage everywhere on your roster already is great. You end up with better results than if you have to force somebody in that fits a specific spot. It happens. You can't always have it, but I think you should be more aware of it, and especially in leagues that have lower position games played requirements. I think it's a little easier to have that depth too if you're in a league that only requires 5 or 10 games at a position to qualify. But more to come as the week rolls along. Be sure to join our Discord with the link in the show description. You can find us on Blue Sky, enosaris.bsky.social, and dvr.bsky.social. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.